Welcome to the Play Ed 3 podcast, where you're the reoccurring guest, whether you're in the classroom or shaping education behind the scenes. I'm Tisha Poncio.
And I'm Rick Butterworth. Together, we bring stories, insights, and conversations that matter to educators, learners, and change makers. Our goal is to bring everyone together to learn, grow, and play. Welcome to the Play Ed 3 podcast. My name is Rick, and as always, I am here with my co-host Tisha. Tish, there was an interesting announcement this week. ChatGPT, ChatGPT 5 got announced.
Okay, what does that mean?
So it's the newest version of ChatGPT, hence it having the number 5 at the end.
Okay, well, 5 is my favorite number, so that's
Of course. Have you actually taken the time to use it yet? Were you even aware that they were announcing this new update?
No, I wasn't aware of that. Rick, here's the thing. I know.
In the tech world.
I do work in the tech world. I do use ChatGPT. I open up ChatGPT, and I was thinking about this today, and I don't even know, it's so funny that you asked me that, because I was thinking, how would I explain ChatGPT to, a 5-year-old or something? And I started thinking about this while I was putting on my makeup. And so maybe the people who are wearing makeup might relate to this, but I
know exactly what you're talking about.
I think that ChatGPT is like makeup essentially, because you're enhancing kind of what you already know. And so I'll go in there and I will open it trusting that it is going to enhance what I already know, teach me some things, and then I'm going to have a critical conversation with it, whether it knows it or not. I'm going to critique it, just like I do my makeup. But I didn't know until you said that, and I actually have ChatGPT up, and it says ChatGPT 5. I don't know what that means. Our guest is probably going to know what that means, and she's going to tell us more about that. So is it okay, Rick, if I introduce our lovely guest with us today?
Go ahead. I'm looking forward to this.
Okay, so this is... nobody's going to intro Rachelle like Tisha Poncio is about to intro her. Rachelle is a doctor. She is a doctor. She is an EdTech consultant. She is an attorney. She is a teacher of Spanish and STEAM and AI. She's ISTE certified. She got the very prestigious Making It Happen Award for ISTE, which I think is fabulous.
Wow.
We'll ask her more about that in a minute. I bet she has the jacket of some sort. She's also a podcaster. She does a billion things. And I joke with her all the time because I joke that she knows so much about AI, and she's been doing AI for 7+ years. So her experience and expertise in AI is long-standing. But she does so much that I'm convinced that she might be part robot now, because every time I talk to her, she is doing a billion things all the time. And it blows my mind. I was following Rachelle long before Rachelle even knew who I was. And then a little known fact about Rachelle, if you don't know, because you're probably Googling her right now, but you're not going to find this. This one fact about Rachelle: she loves Nashville. And throughout the whole podcast, she's gonna hold up things that say Nashville. She's got tons of stories, and I was so humbled to get to go to an EdTech girls trip with her to Nashville. She took us all around the city, taught us all kinds of things, and so, in honor of Rachelle loving Nashville, I'm gonna flip the script on this podcast, Rick, and I'm gonna do the Juice Box Confessional first.
Let's do it.
Rachelle gets the Juice Box Confessional. If you're listening and you've been fast forwarding to the very end, you're not going to have to do that with Rachelle's podcast.
I might need to put a timestamp in to say right at the start, Juice Box Confessions right at the beginning,
right away.
4 minutes in.
Yes.
Go straight there.
Yes, because I don't like to follow the same script all the time.
No.
Okay, so Rachelle, I'm going to let you do a little brief intro, and add anything else you would like for the people who do not know you, and then we'll deep dive into the confessional.
Well, thank you, and Rick, for the opportunity to be here. And Tisha, thank you for that intro. I don't know what else I could add to that other than yes, I do sleep because I get asked that a lot. I love learning and doing the work that I do, whether it's in my classroom or with other teachers and working with companies and always looking for more somehow, you just don't stop. But I enjoy it. I really do enjoy it. And I do love Nashville, but what I love the most about going to Nashville is with friends like you and just having that time together and making new connections there as well. So
yeah. Okay. So here are I have a couple of questions for you. Okay. So you have cowboy boots, right?
I do.
How many pairs of cowboy boots do you own? That's the first question I have.
Okay. So if they're the booties, do I count that as a half? Because it's just...
Oh, yeah. We should count that. Yes.
So what's the point score here then? Is it half of that or is it a full point?
No, it's a full point because, yes, they count.
Okay.
Well, I do have a pair from long ago when I used to do line dancing. So they are a really nice pair. And I would say probably with those, in addition to the newer ones that I've gotten, probably 10.
Okay.
10 or less, which compare the number of other types of shoes and footwear I have, it's far, far lower.
Let's just point this out. Rachelle, who does not live in Texas, nor does she live in Tennessee, has more cowboy boots than I have ever owned in my whole life as a Texan. Okay, so your cowboy boots. You can pick any of your favorite cowboy boots for this question. I just need you to kind of know what we were working with. Let's say that your cowboy boots are going to star in an 80s or 90s music video.
Oh, goodness.
Which video are you picking for those cowboy boots?
Wow. That is a great question because I had 5 songs pop in my head and they're probably around the same time frame. So I would say Cyndi Lauper, Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
Yes.
I could see dancing around with my friends with that one. Maybe Prince, 1999, only because that came up in a conversation not that long ago with somebody. And I am a fan of Bananarama, Cruel Summer.
Yes.
That would be a good one. And Safety Dance is kind of, I don't know.
This is great. This is fabulous. I knew you'd have great answers. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next Juice Box Confessional. I know Rick is loving this because it's he had no idea.
There just enjoying this reverse of the episode right now. So, I'm amazed at how quick you were able to just list off songs straight off. I'm very impressed with that because my mind went blank what I'm going to use my cowboy boots for.
Rachelle knows her music. You see, she isn't going to Nashville just because. She's not just going for the cowboy boots. The music there is phenomenal. Okay, so 80s, 90s Rachelle. We're kind of taking it back. What was her vibe? What was her go-to store? What was the movie that she watched on repeat? What was the CD or 8-track or cassette tape?
I'm going to have to say that's before my time because we're just pretending right now. 80s and 90s are code for the 90s and 2000s for anybody that's listening out there because everything on the internet is right. I have to... You said CD. We'll go CD, but I will say the funniest thing about my very first CD is I won a CD player off of a radio station.
Oh, yeah.
And I was so excited. And I'm not kidding. The very first CD I bought was the soundtrack to Top Gun.
That's so cool.
Nice.
And here's why. Because in college, we would go and a friend had a cabin and it had speakers all around, the cabin, and they would blast it, because the movie was out and everyone was so excited about it. And I just remember how cool that sounded. And so here's me, I go out and then I belong to all of those CD purchasing things that they get you hooked in. So now in the other room, I probably have 4,000 CDs. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with, and also cassette tapes. You can't get rid of them. So Top Gun was definitely a favorite. And then, did you say movie too?
Yeah.
Huge fan of Breakfast Club. Anything in that era. Breakfast Club, 16 Candles.
Do you want to know
Mad Science. No, Weird Science.
Oh, yes. Rachelle and I know Rick will not be surprised. So this morning, I did not even plan to talk about this. And we've talked now about the green. We have this green theme going on this podcast without meaning to.
I'm thinking we're celebrating St. Paddy's Day in August now. So.
We're not. But here's what I'm going to tell you. And I have not told a single soul this. And I wouldn't have even shared it if Rachelle hadn't said this just now, hadn't planned this question. It was a just random question. But I believe in whimsical mornings and making anything in your day as whimsical as possible. So that could be like taking your coffee with you when you go around and walk around the block, or picking some flowers in, a field where you're not going to get the cops called on you or whatever, right? But this morning I was making my coffee. I ground my beans. I know you're not surprised by that, Rachelle. But I thought, today I'm going to make it more whimsical. And I have a record player in my dining room. And I was like, I'm going to listen to a record while I make my coffee. And guess what record I pulled out? The Breakfast Club.
Did you really?
Yes, I did. And that is what I listened to this morning while I was getting ready. So that's awesome. Those are great answers. Okay, last question for Box Confessional. I bet you've never been asked these questions before, have you?
No, but I do have a comment on your previous answer to that question.
Yes, tell me.
The record player. So clearly I had one growing up.
Yeah.
But I was in DC for an event, and in the room in this hotel, which was unbelievable, they had a record player.
Wow.
And it was a Victrola, I think. And every day, I was only there 2 days, they had 5 albums, and they would change the albums each day for you.
Oh, that's
which was super cool. So the morning that I left, I had to leave the hotel at like 5:30 in the morning, and I didn't have time the day before, and I also couldn't find the on-off button on it because it was in this weird, I'm like, why is it not playing? So I figured it out, and I got ready that morning. I put the record on, and it was such a interesting, I'd never heard of the artist, but it was like, all right, I'm tired, but this is pretty cool right now.
It is cool.
So,
it changes your day to kind of do something whimsical and retro like that. And so I have a couple of different records, and that is one of my hobbies, is going out and finding really random records from when I was a kid.
Nice.
This one's a fun question, and the questions go with our guests. So I really do. I don't plan these ahead of time. Rick doesn't usually know what I'm going to ask.
I ain't got a clue.
He just trusts me.
I sit there and look pretty. I mean, well, I sit there at least.
You're doing a good job.
So I want to know, what was Rachelle's most rebellious 80s and 90s fashion choice?
Oh, my. Okay. Yeah, I got you. I can even send a picture of this. I am not ashamed. I am not ashamed. I've shown a couple of pictures of me. So it was definitely a clash, right? So there was a picture of me with my father at my grandfather's house, and I have a magazine that I'm holding, and it has the centerfold. The picture of it is Michael Jackson in his yellow sweater vest. And I am wearing a sweatshirt with a rainbow on it because when I was a majorette growing up, the group was the Rainbow Connection. So I had this sweatshirt. I had on a black leather jacket. I had on jeans, the whatever 80s jeans, 90s, I forgot 90s jeans. And I definitely had kind of a mullet for a hairstyle. And then the best part of it was I had on the construction worker type boots, because they were
awesome.
In with,
Yes.
So when you see this picture, you're like, okay, she's got the leather jacket on, but she's got the jeans, and she's got this sweatshirt, but she's holding Michael Jackson,
It was
and then she's got these boots.
Identity crisis.
It was, and there are two. There's that one, and then the Limited and Express had come out, and neon was all the fashion, and Madonna with all the bracelets, and I have an outfit where I have on. It's so embarrassing. It's not embarrassing at all. Neon green, for real neon green, which ties with our theme. Corduroy pants. I had the cuff.
Wow.
Those, I forget what the kind of shoes were called, but just a very plain, slip-on kind of shoes with the laces, white shoes. It was a V-neck pink, cotton top. And then it had a collared shirt underneath it. And then you had this other scarf that you wore over the top of it. And then one of those belts around the hips of it. So it is The hair was still the same as the Michael Jackson thing. I think that
That's
might have been the same year.
hysterical.
I just shifted.
That was a haircut. I feel like we all probably have pictures of that. That's
Yeah.
You know what's so interesting is the pink and green theme is coming back for sure. And I was watching Bama Rush on TikTok. So Rick, in all of these universities, they have like these sorority rush weeks, right? And so the themes are getting very scary because I think their latest theme was like 2016 was their theme. And everybody was like, why is the year I graduated a theme at someone's sorority? So interesting to look back at the fashion choices. But as you know, everything comes back around. I think that haircut that you just mentioned, I think it's going to come back around.
Not on my head.
Not for me. Not for me. But you know the boys today, the teen boys. I watched a video and it made me laugh so hard because obviously Jace is 15. All of his friends, this is interesting, have naturally curly hair, and they are leaning into it. They look like llamas. So if you've seen this meme, it's not wrong. And then I heard someone compare them to the 80s grandmas, like the haircuts, because they're showing up in like floral tops, like they're about to go to the beach, and then like different colored shorts, and then socks with their Crocs on. Like they are not caught dead without socks with sandals. And I just find it so interesting, the similarities. It's so weird. Well, Rick, thank you for letting me do Juice Box Confessional first with Rachelle. I am glad we did that because we're going to get into the serious stuff now. I know you are eager to ask her some questions on AI. She has a new book out. Do you know what the book is called, Rick?
What the Tech?
Yeah.
See, I did my research. I did my research.
No, but like what the tech, which is like what the heck. I love it.
The play on words is brilliant.
Absolutely.
Thanks. I thought of it driving home from work one day, and I could even walk to that spot right now, and it just popped into my head, and I giggled, and every time I say it, I still giggle, and that's been like 3 years of giggling. Although I did have a student say to me, "That's really not that funny," and I went, "No, it's kind of funny." And then 3 days later, she came back and she said, it is kind of funny. I told you. You just have to like set in a little bit.
Sometimes the students have to humble you before they
do.
Before they join you, right?
Right. Exactly.
Okay, Rick, you get to start us off with AI.
Ooh. Well, I mean, you say AI, but I'm not going straight into AI.
Okay.
So obviously, as Tish mentioned, What the Tech's your latest book. You've written, am I correct, 10 books now?
Yes, 10 of my own books.
Which I'm still amazed by. And What the Tech is your latest one that focuses on emerging tech, which my first question is, I'm going to play the not familiar with all this. What is emerging tech? Because to me, tech is tech.
Yeah, it's you're right. Tech is tech. But for me, when I think about it, like the course that I teach, STEAM, I made up the name of it, which is What's Next in Emerging Tech. And so it was going to be all of these things that we're seeing evolve over time, artificial intelligence, things with coding, and then even getting into like blockchain, metaverse, crypto, Web 3.0, Internet of Things, robotics, biotech, wearable tech, quantum computing, like lots and lots of very interesting things that are not really totally new. They might have been around for a while, just like AI. Everybody, a lot of people were like, "Oh, you mean it's not new?" I'm like, "No, in the middle of the last century." But so things that are continuing to show up, whether in education, in the world, in industries, that are in some cases kind of like disrupting the way that people are working and things. But in a lot of cases, it's making things a little bit better or easier, or who knows what at this point, because it's emerging.
That really helps me understand that, and I'm sure there's someone that's listening that may not be sure on what that actually encompasses, because I also see like emerging tech and AI, but it's like, well, AI is a part of that. And you mentioned Web3, which, I mean, very, very high level. What is Web3?
So there's Web, like the very original Web 1.0, Web 2, Web 3. So Web 1 was just like, not much interaction or anything like that. It was like a web, you put stuff on your computer. It was a site that only did limited things. And then it advanced to where you have social media and you can get information. And then now when you have Web3, it has all of these other components too. And it's kind of like where you can bring in, or not the internet, but because we're already on the internet, but things like the metaverse where you can interact with others, or you have people using blockchain technology and things like cryptocurrency. And there's so much more. It's just a lot like the next iteration of the web from what we've been doing to more kind of like open and community driven kind of. So it's still evolving. And there are a lot of different concepts that are involved in that. So we'll see kind of what happens. But yeah, the original web, if you remember back to the 1990s or something, it was just kind of like you read something, it's a blog, it's Yahoo, it's those things. And then you get into like where we are today, which is still Web 2, and that's your Facebook and YouTube and Google and all of those things that we love and rely on. And then 3 is evolving, and that's where you're seeing a lot of these other terms and emerging tech.
Yeah. So, yeah, because I know obviously Web 2 is seen as like decentralized. So you have your social networks, your Facebook, your Google, your Apple, all these that are controlling everything that we can and can't do on the web or within their platforms. And then Web 3 is now a more what they call decentralized, where there's not an entity that's controlling everything. And there's a lot more complexity, I know, that goes into all these things, because it's like, what is true decentralization and stuff? But we won't go down that rabbit hole. But you mentioned things like metaverse, and I know that your book covers AR and VR, which AR is artificial reality. You've got virtual reality, and you've also got, is it mixed reality? Is it MR?
Mixed reality, yeah, MR, yep.
But I think one of the things I'm very interested in AR, VR, and metaverse. What benefits does the likes of, let's look at AR and VR, for instance, in the classroom, and also the challenges that schools may face? Because if I think of VR, I'm thinking there's a headset that's going on. I need a powerful computer to run whatever it is that I'm running. And like, how would we be able to bring in this emerging tech into the classroom, especially where a school's like not really got the funding to implement high-end equipment or anything? What's your thoughts? Where do you see these kind of technologies going for education?
Well, that's a big part of the question is the resources and the funding. Like, how do you make sure that all students have opportunities to learn and experience these things? And so like augmented reality, if you go to like the Merge Cube or something, and I always joke, and I have one right over here on the side of me. They're never far away. I have so many of them here. But, a student being able to hold a Merge Cube and understand like where the planets are in the solar system, or to look at shapes for geometry and understand angles and all of that. And I think, and I've joked with my students so many times over the years, I say, if I would have had one of these when I was in 9th grade geometry, I wouldn't have gotten Fs for half of the year. Like I could have seen it, held it, experienced it. I would have known where the planets were, because you're holding it. And the augmented part is like you still see everything around you. But the fun part of it is you can actually take and, record like the students holding the Merge Cube on their head, but then it's like the sun, and it looks like the student has like their head is the sun. But being able to just see that and hold it in your hands, and then going to the VR, or you're right, like the headsets, but you don't even need to have the headsets. I mean, if you want the truly fully immersive experience, then of course having the headsets is great, but you can kind of get a similar experience by going, web-based VR, and there's lots of tools out there for that. And the fun part about that is, depending on, like, again, if your school has resources, or even us as adult learners, always just being able to have a simulation, like something that's a very dangerous thing to do, or training. I mean, not just in education, a lot of people are using these technologies to train people for any number of areas of work, but for students who are doing a chemistry experiment, for example, and maybe a school doesn't actually have all of those resources for them to do a bunch of chemistry experiments, but they do have enough to get a few sets of whatever the equipment is. And then the students are going in, they're kind of having that same simulation of it without all those other materials. And in some cases, we know, like in a chemistry class, I don't know, just saying back in the day when I had chem, there may or may not have been some minor mishaps, not because of me, but just in the room in general. So, being able to do that. And there's some really great tools out there. Like there is a language app that I used 5 years ago, actually. I started using it, and it's for language learning. And you don't have to put the headset on because you can they have 360 images on your computer. But when the students, if they did, they are interacting and talking with somebody who's speaking the target language. And as they turn around, they actually feel like they're in that cafe or in that restaurant or in that store because the company went and took all of these pictures, at different countries. And they even use that in the military. So it's interesting to see how things are evolving. Even some companies have career view. And so students can kind of step into what it's like to have a certain career, what the day in, day out would look like for them without actually having to go there. So lots of cool possibilities, but the funding is the tricky part. But there's fortunately some grants and things out there, and sometimes companies will lend resources just for them to try out. And yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. I mean, we've had people on the podcast before who are ADHD. I mean, for me, dyslexia. Having that hands-on experience, I mean, definitely in the likes of sciences, being able to do experiments rather than just reading it from a book or watching a video, has a more powerful impact on myself, for example, than just reading and trying to consume that information. But obviously with schools may not have the funding for those materials, whether it's in biology, chemistry, physics, or any other lesson, being able to bring in, even if we're just looking at artificial reality, a device with a merge cube, and those merge cubes are literally a cube that you just, is it an app that you use from Merge that then integrates and you can listen, you can choose what you want to actually look at? Perfect.
They're so cool.
Yeah, they are. And it also, another product that was named CoSpaces is now the Light Decks. And so you can, and my students have taken CoSpaces, now the Light Decks, and created something on the Merge Cube. So it's kind of like a choose your own adventure, or any kind of things that they want to create. But when they see a frog dissection, for example, it's like, wow. And then the features of it also have lessons and immersive readers if you're looking at accessibility and language translation. So all of those other aspects added onto it that really enhance that whole experience.
Yeah. And that's why I love it. It just opens the doors to so many extra possibilities. And it's an example of where technology can actually support what we're trying to do. So because we're always advocating that let's focus on the process and how we're going to try and do something and then bring a tool in. Something like Merge. Look, I've never used Merge myself, but from what I'm aware of and what I've seen, it has that power to really just bridge the gap for any student to try and actually get hands-on who aren't able to learn in the same typical way that we have in the classroom. And I can see a lot more like collaborative kind of things. Tish, what,
I was just going to say, this episode is not sponsored by Merge Cube, but shout out to Merge Cube.
But Merge, if you're listening and you want to sponsor the podcast, we're open to ideas. I mean,
I think it's interesting. I've been sitting here kind of listening, and as you know, I am ADHD. But so I was taking some notes while you were talking to each other. And I started thinking these are such simple ways to bring AI into the classroom, emerging technology into the classroom. I have a couple of questions for Rachelle just based on that conversation. How do we prepare students for, this puts me on my soapbox a little bit because I get really frustrated, and I think everybody, Rick and Rachelle probably already know this. If you're listening, you may not know this.
28 minutes in and we're already on the soapbox.
We're already on a soapbox.
I think that's a new record.
I get really annoyed with the thought, because it is a misconception like you guys were talking about when we're talking about AI. That is the only thing that people are thinking of when we talk Web3. And I've always been like slightly annoyed because I'm like, why is AI getting to be the star of the show with everything? And there's so much more out there for our students to know. I was like scrolling through just your table of contents. We have blockchain technology and you have NFTs. And there's so much out there for students to learn aside from AI. But how are we going to prepare students for Web3 and this comfortability, right? Being comfortable in these spaces with students if we're having knee-jerk reactions to them embracing technology in general?
Oh goodness, that was a heavy hitter question. Can we go back to the other ones at the beginning, like movies and things? No, I'm kidding.
Balance.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, but I think a lot of it, there's a commonality through a lot of what we do when it comes to technology, and it doesn't depend on what the technology is, I don't think, even though that's a big part of it, because there's some scary stuff about some of the technology, like even with AI. If students are not taught, and if educators or anybody is not taught what to put into these different systems, like personally identifiable information, and you lack that training, then that's not really that good. But I think what the commonality is between anything that we've seen come up over the years is it comes down to like literacy. And we've talked about literacy, media literacy, digital literacy, and those terms are evolving. It's also developing the different skills and like a base understanding and knowledge of what these things are. And that digital literacy, there's a book by Kevin Roose, who's a New York Times journalist, and he actually was the closing keynote at the ISTE conference in 2023. And I had read his book. It's Future Proof. There's 9, and I always forget. It's right over here on my side. And I know if I grab it, I'll knock everything down that's over there. So I'm not going to right now. But he had a lot of really great points in there. And so I'd read the book before interviewing him, and I was super nervous about it. I'm like, I'm going to go up and interview him. Are you serious? But in his book, one thing that he mentioned is, as we're seeing all these different changes and automation and these different technologies, that you have to shift that thinking about digital literacy to digital discernment, because now we have AI generating all of these things. People are generating things you can't tell if they're real or not. There's so much information that's out there. And if you look at like Web3, and there's not this, somebody has control over and people are putting anything out there, like there's a lot of things happening in the world and in the world of technology. And I think that even, using tools years ago, 10 years ago, 11 years ago, students, just because they know how to use technology and they have phones doesn't mean they know how to use it in the right way. And so as these technologies continue to evolve, I think what we really have to do is think about teaching. And that's what I started to do. It's like, I'm not an expert in all of these areas, but in my class, I just started to learn about them and then teach about, oh, hey, well, this is blockchain. And later on, you may actually need to know what this is, all of these other terms, NFTs, and I let the students kind of be my fact finders and do like scavenger hunts and bring the information back. But, like I said before, my whole thing that now that you ask that question, I'm thinking about it is like, we always have to be, as educators, ready and willing to kind of learn about whatever is coming down the road, whether it's AI, whether it's, oh, okay, I have to know what crypto is, and we're going to NFTs, like, what does that even mean? So that we can prepare students to be able to navigate later on and not be totally thrown off by like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this? I have no clue what this is. And to know how to use these different technologies, especially AI, in a way that's like, we keep hearing, safe, ethical, responsible.
Yeah. It's so interesting because don't you think, as teachers, and I didn't think about this until you just said it, but as teachers, we aren't just signing up to teach students. We're essentially signing up to learn the future. Like, we are signing up to do that. And I don't think any teacher really, I didn't fully understand what it meant to be a teacher. Like, I knew what I wanted to do, and I knew what I knew from my own experience. But what I didn't know is that I was really signing up to truly be a lifelong learner. And also, as a teacher, I'm signing up to have an open mindset for my students. And if I forget about that, I'm limiting my students. It's so interesting because as you were talking, I love what you said about moving from literacy to discernment. And Rick and I have talked about discernment a lot, just as we were writing our book, and discernment over what we were putting in there, and kind of we would talk about things. But if you are listening, and I'm not sure, Rick and Rachelle, if you Have you even seen the bunnies on the trampoline? Have you seen the bunnies on the trampoline?
Yeah.
And
The
it's
one
so
disappears.
so interesting because there's so much talk about this bunnies on the trampoline. People are writing songs about the bunnies. Now, I love bunnies. Rick can tell you. I have these little bunnies in my yard, and I've named them. They aren't my pets, but I've named them. It's so interesting because it's such an adorable clip, right? But this article from the Washington Post says how to spot an AI video. LOL, you can't. And
Yeah.
I am finding it harder and harder, even on videos where I follow the people to think, is this really them? And so I'm really interested. I wasn't even planning this, but this is a question for both of you. How do you discern the people that you're following and the information that they're sharing with you? And I also need to eat lunch soon, just FYI. No, I'm kidding. I do need to eat, but I want to know.
Reminding you again.
Yeah. How do we get to that place of discernment when it feels like everyone and everything around us isn't real?
I know. Do you want to go, Rick? Or you want me to go?
I'm go on, Rachelle. You're our guest for the podcast, so.
All right. Okay. So, well, one thing that I recommend, there are some different sites out there that you can use for your own knowledge, or you can use with your students. And they come down to like, is it real? Is it AI? Or some variation of that. And the first time that I did this one, and oh gosh, I bet that was probably 5 years ago, I did not score very well at all. And they had music, they had real photos of like, 6 of the same person. And they're like, which one is actually the real picture? And then there were works of art. And then there was some poems and things that were in there, and you were supposed to read them and decide human or not. And then you get your score back. Like even the music, because the ones I thought that were AI generated, no, they were real. Somebody did them. And the writing, I'm like, that sounds really odd. Nope, it was real. I've gotten better. And when it comes to some of those things like the videos and the images, especially images are a little bit easier because if you look at them closely, there's like something that's asymmetrical, something that's off. The famous like 7 fingers on the one hand, or like you and I are in a picture together, but yet like my hand is like on the opposite side of where it should be. And then even the videos, looking at the background for the clarity and those types of things. But if it's people that you're following, the accounts, and looking at them, like, do you know who those people are? Like, is there something that if you Googled their name and they say, oh, well, they're great with AI and they create these videos, but it is getting more difficult to tell. And I tested out some functionalities in Gemini like 7 months ago for creating these short 8-second clips, and have been using some other things. And it's mind-boggling how vivid it is. I prompted it to create like a classroom of students learning Spanish and having the best time ever. And it put in like all these different people, and they looked like real people.
Wow.
And even the capabilities with Notebook LM and other tools that are out there I did this in September of last year for my AI book, had it generate a podcast. And with Notebook now you have interactive mode. So I've been uploading different things, and I interrupt these real people. And I played it for my students. They said, oh, wow, those are professional podcasters. What are their names? I said, I don't know. They're not real. They're AI. They're like, what? What do you mean it's AI? So it is difficult to tell. But some of those, if it looks like it's like, there's no way, like the bunnies, if you look, it's that close watching and you're like, wait a minute. And anybody that hasn't seen it, sorry, spoiled it for you a little bit, but you still have to look.
We'll link it so you can see it. It'll help with your discernment. Rick, how do you, like, I know you follow a lot of crypto accounts. Rick and I do crypto. I know we were joking. Rachelle, do you do crypto?
Yes.
Yes.
I do.
So we are all in the crypto game, but Rick, how do you determine as you're following these accounts, or, how do I
determine whether it's actually AI or not? Well, I've not found a cryptocurrency that's been AI apart from the ones that actually are cryptocurrency, AI focused businesses in cryptocurrency. Thank God. But I think the one thing I've noticed, if you give me something that is written with AI, I will struggle like hell. to understand whether it is actually AI or not. But I was watching, I watch a lot of different videos on Instagram and TikTok, and I'm able to pick up certain characteristics from the videos and photos that it's AI. It's like what Rachelle was saying with the background. There can be certain things that can just stick out like a sore thumb. And it's the same with the characters, but there was one that actually showed, AI is getting way too good. Pick which one's real, which one's AI. And all it was a knife slicing through either a piece of fruit or a vegetable. So one of them that really stood out to me that was blatantly AI was it was slicing through an orange, and I was like, okay, looks real. But as the knife went down, you started to see the knife through the orange, like very faintly. And I was thinking, okay, maybe it's a really thin piece of the orange that it's cutting. And then this like big block of orange just fell down. I was just like, AI, straight off. There's still certain things it can't do, but it is getting worrying. And I think if you don't specialize in certain things, like for myself, creativity is always what I'm passionate about. It can get very difficult for those who aren't creative,
don't you think it's time consuming? I mean, we talk about AI helping to save time, but the amount of time it's now taking to be discerning in all of the media that we're taking in, I'm like, are we really saving time now?
Yeah, I will agree with you. We're saving time in the sense of whether we're creating it or not. But at the same time, how much stuff have we had to, before AI was generating videos and images, how long have we been actually looking into, is this a real footage of a UFO? Is this actually Bigfoot? Is this the Loch Ness Monster or whatever? Yeah. The problem is you've now got a lot more people that can easily create things that almost look real but aren't. And I think we need to start making it more readily available of identifying what is fake and what isn't fake more readily available.
Okay, so here's another question for both of you. It's now the Tisha Poncio segment. No, I'm kidding.
Right, I'm just going to change the logo design while we're on this to the Tisha Poncio podcast.
It really ties into what you both have said, and I'm so, I have questions about this, and I think I probably represent a lot of people who are listening and who don't feel like they're experts, but okay, we're going to save time. Okay, but are we really saving time? I'm always looking at it from all these crazy perspectives. It is my neurodivergent that looks at it. Do you both believe that therefore, based on what we just talked about, that authenticity and realness is gonna be the monetary, I don't know, it's gonna, you know how it used to be like the TikTok shop, blah, 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 blah. And it would be like, okay, I have 1 million followers and I'm getting all of this money. I am challenging both of you because I believe that the authenticity of people is what is going to be the value of wealth, the critical thinking, the ability to think through and have discernment quickly is going to be a sign of wealth in the future. What say you to that?
What say you? I say I love the word authenticity, and that's like my keyword all the time. I say I want to be authentic, and when I work with people, I say I value my authenticity above all else. And then we know, of course, in learning, if you're giving feedback to students, like what are the key words? Authentic, meaningful, and timely. Yep. And being your authentic self in your classroom. So I would say that I would like to agree with you with what you're saying, and I think that is going to make a difference.
Don't you think that we need to be teaching our students how to be authentic as well? And, we talk about this in our book, but I'm interested to know from your book, your writing, you obviously are a very, very thoughtful and skilled writer. You have 10 books, including your latest, What the Tech. I love it so much. I want to know, what does your book offer for the beginners who are listening, the veteran teachers, the closed mindsets that might be listening, the naysayers? What is your book offering, maybe, and what does your perspective offer that nobody else is?
Oh, that was an intense like follow-up to that first question there. Well, I think just by the nature of the title of it, What the Tech, because I literally was driving home from school and rounded where I said, not that far, like I could point to it, I could walk there.
One day there's going to be a sign there and it's going to be like, this is where Rachelle,
What the Tech.
Oh, yeah, all of her creative thinking happened here.
Yeah, some of the different titles, but like that one, in my mind, I was just thinking about AI and metaverse and blockchain and all of these things. And then other things that educators are dealing with too, with different initiatives and mandates and all of the things, because education does not get easier with passing time. Like there's more and more. But it just popped into my head and I thought, what the tech? And then I went, oh. And I thought about it and I sent an email off to the editor, like, what do you think about this title? But so the point of it too is like, it's kind of like my journey and my story about the class I've been teaching, as it has been for the last 7 of the 9 years, I think, now that I've taught it. And the book is like, okay, here's some AI, here's some blockchain, here are these different topics. And I did swap out the last chapter. It was, I cannot remember what it was supposed to be for the final chapter, but in light of things that were happening in schools and in the world last year with cybersecurity issues, I swapped it out and made a chapter on cybersecurity. So for anybody who's listening and is thinking like, what are all these things? I really wanted it to be a guide that was high level with some examples. And then I pulled in some stories from educators, from students about the impact or their own experiences with this or what their predictions are. And so that for me, aside from my authentic kind of narrative to what I've done and overview of it, is bringing in other voices to really make it authentic and to see a range from somebody who's in the classroom to somebody who I have industry experts that have been working in these areas for a long time and kind of bridging it together. So that's one of the things I like about my books, is when I can share the stories of other people.
I agree. We felt the exact same way when we were writing our book. And I just want to shout this out because you have educator stories, student insights, tech insights. And I think what I am finding just after, because I did a really deep dive on Rachelle. No, I was trying to find things that I didn't already know, but I think what I found is that, your 10 books, all of the things that you've included, especially in this book, really tell a story about you and your motive behind writing all of these books. And it's really to empower the people around you, whether it's students or other teachers or people in the industry. And I'm sure I'm speaking for you, but is there anything you want to say about just all of the work that you've done? Because you've done a ton in the educational technology space. Like, what would you say your high level cherry on top motive is for doing all of that?
I love learning. That's the biggest thing, but I like being able to take my knowledge and share that with other people and help them to avoid overwhelm or frustration or save time and all those different things. And so that's what keeps me going. Like, it's fun to be able to interact with educators from all around the world or different students. And I don't know, I have often said that I don't ever want to be in a place where somebody asks me for an idea or something about one of these topics and not be able to at least give them some starting point. That's why I kind of just keep going and pushing myself. And there are periods where I kind of back off a little bit. And then even more recently, I'm like, oh, I got to get back to reading. Like, I got a book over the holidays that I haven't had a chance to, because it was so hot this summer. I'm like, and then so busy sitting outside, I got aside from the reading, but trying to learn new things, which is why I started to do sessions last year on AI and the law and do things on cybersecurity, because I wanted to stretch myself. But there are also areas where we're seeing a lot of changes happening and things happening in schools. And there's a lack of training for teachers out there, which is not a little known fact. I mean, people know and people openly admit that. Sure. So I figure if I can be a part of that, I don't know, solution and help to educate others, whether it's form of a book or me talking to myself in my podcast, well, then you know what? That's what it's going to be.
Or have Rachelle come speak to your teachers or virtual trainings. Or I think it's really important. I think that is something that we've seen a lot of in all of the guests that we've talked to. There is lack of education, and it's really no one's fault. There's not enough time. There's never enough time. It is hard to take in all the information, and if you're like me, it takes forever to process the information. And I've just kind of accepted that I'm not going to be the expert of all the things, but I at least can surround myself around people who are the experts of a lot of things. And then through them, I will learn. And I think that is what you've done. I learned from you. If you haven't bought Rachelle's book, you need to go get Rachelle's book. Rachelle, this is just a personal question, but like my ADHD can't, when I open up your book, I'm like going to the end. Just so y'all know, if I buy a book, I'm going to the end or I'm looking at all the chapters, and typically I want to read the last chapter first. But do I need to read your book in order? That is my question.
I love that you asked that question, because what's really funny about every book that I've written is you really don't have to read them all in order.
Yeah.
You could pick up any one of those topics that are of interest to you. And even in my AI book, same thing. If you're just like, oh, I just want some ideas right now to start the year with students, or I want to understand about ethics of AI, and you just flip to that chapter. And the other books too, with different stories. One book didn't even have chapters; it had like themes instead.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah. I think that's a
Rachelle's
rare kind of thing.
books are accessible to all of the people. That's what we want you to know. Rick, do you have any last questions?
Yeah, I think what would you say one thing about the popularity of AI that actually forces you to let's go and say, like, Tish got onto a soapbox. What is one thing with AI that forces you onto your soapbox of really just
grind your
gears? Yeah, really grind your gears. Let's go with that.
I mean, pretty much just if you say AI, you're going to get me on the soapbox.
Okay, so trigger. AI.
Yeah, because as soon as somebody asks me something about it, it's just like I can't stop talking about it, depending on what the focus is. And I come at that from all angles, because I have spreadsheets because I use surveys, and I haven't always used surveys for the AI, but for a majority of it. And just in one of the sheets, just from this year, there's and not everybody does a survey in the sessions too, but I use it as a learning source for myself. But I mean, thousands upon thousands of names of people that I've trained. I always look at where do they rate themselves, a 1 to a 5? What are their concerns? And a lot of times I see, I don't want to learn about this. I don't want to teach about it. It doesn't belong. And there's a lot of the no, no, no. And then there's a lot on the upper end where it's I really know that I need to understand this because to prepare the students. And I take all of that in, and I think I really do kind of thrive on those different perspectives and experiences, because then that pushes me to really want to be okay, I understand your hesitancy and you're raring to go. So we're going to bring this together. And then I just really like to share the message of, yeah, it's great. There's possibilities, but there's responsibilities. And you don't really have a choice about teaching it, because as educators, we're in the best position to teach students. And to do that, we have to understand it. And if we're afraid of what students are going to do with it, that's an even greater reason to understand what the capabilities are of some of these different tools that are out there. And whether or not we say, oh, you cannot use ChatGPT or Gemini or any of the other large language models, the reality of it is, and this goes back to when I was in high school, they still can. Yeah. So if they're going to, then they might as well understand how to use it in a safe way. Yeah. So I'm off the soapbox now.
No, what I want to just add to that is, in general, and I think Rick will agree with me on this, in general, and I'm speaking from my personal experience, anytime I have resisted something, it never ends up going well, because what you resist persists. That did not become a quote for no reason. It will continue to pop up and continue to pop up and will be like a thorn because it's probably telling you that it's something you need to learn or address.
Yeah.
And so, I know that there's a lot of pushback on certain things. The reason I ask a lot of these questions, Rachelle, is because one of my soapbox topics right now is this Texas bill on the cell phones. And I've been watching all kinds of things, the parent side on TikTok. I've been reading what teachers are saying. And I just still do not believe, I will never believe that banning anything from anyone has ever served anybody the result that they're expecting. And so I love that you do the surveys, though, because I think that speaks to a lot of what you've said. You aren't just saying you like to learn, you really are learning from your attendees and you're reflecting on what they're saying and diving deeper. And I think that is just amazing. I am so glad that you joined us. This is one of my favorite episodes. Just you've given us so much to think about, and you entertained all of my crazy questions, Rachelle. So thank you, Rick.
Thank you both.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick, do you have anything else?
No, I think first off, Rachelle, if people want to follow you, where's best to find you online?
Yeah, I'm very consistent for pretty much everything because it's my first initial, so R, my middle name, Dene, and it's 915, which actually is my birth date. And that's on Instagram, Blue Sky, Twitter, Threads, all those spaces. If you add a Gmail to it, send me an email. If you put the www and the .com around that, you got my blog. And you can find any information about, having me come and work with your teachers or speak at your event also on my blog site. So
amazing.
Thank you both.
That's brilliant.
Thank you. We've enjoyed having you.
Yep. All links will be in our show notes as well. So if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify, it is all there. So I think that comes to the end of our episode. If you've enjoyed it, like, subscribe, follow, wherever you're listening or watching, share, please. It all helps. And until next time, we'll see you again. Bye for now.
Thank you for being a part of this episode. Continue the conversation with us online. Subscribe and follow, and let us know if you'd like to join as a guest or if there's someone you'd like to hear from.
We'd love to connect with you on X, Instagram, and TikTok. All links and show notes will be available in the episode description. Until next time, keep learning, growing, and playing.